It's a very old, well-established practice. The original founder, a guy named Balint Orban, the founder of the specialty of periodontics, for all intent and purpose. When he started, there was no specialty. And his son, Tom Orban, took over in the early 60s. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Dental School, and when I moved out to Colorado in 1976, I was a general dentist at that point and just looking for work, and I ended up taking over or helping out a general practice in a downtown Denver building across from this practice, which at that point there were two periodontists in it, Tom Orban and David Silverman. I stuck my head in just because I recognized the name, and they, like any good specialty practice, saw a young, fresh-blooded dentist who could refer patients over and started to court me a little bit. A year after that, they asked me, they needed another periodontist, and they asked me if I wanted to go back to school to be a periodontist, and pretty much I refused. So they knew the dean and the head of the program at Northwestern, where I did my residency, called him up, and he was from Penn and knew me from when I was doing my undergrad, and they just set it up for me to go to the Northwestern University to do my periodontal residency, so to speak, back then. So I went there for a couple of years, and I started in the office we are in right now on June 6th, 1980. So I had been there for quite a while. There was just 3 periodontists at that point. So there were the 3 of us for a few years, and then after about 10 years, the senior member, Dr. Orban, left the practice, and there was just Dr. Silverman and I. And I think about 21 or 22 years ago, we needed another associate, and Ann Summers had just graduated or was graduating from her residency program. She originally went to school at CU Dental School, and she became a perfect fit into our practice. So once again, we were at full capacity with 3 dentists. When Ann came in, everything softened dramatically, which was to the betterment of the practice. As far as, the advancements in dentistry went, when we started, the culture was old school learning. The old school dentistry goes back to Europe almost, and the original dental students, and they weren't nice to people. That's the best way I can say it. They were very hard on you. They pushed you real hard, but it was the way that we were taught. When I started in 1980, bone grafting, which is just commonplace today, or replacement of bone for lost teeth around periodontally compromised teeth, was in its infancy. They were working with eye sclera. They were using plaster of Paris. There was a lot of different ways to try to grow bone, and it was just all experimental. We were just starting, and implants, for all intent and purpose, were non-existent, which is now a major part of practice. No one had even heard of LANAP and laser surgery. That didn't exist at all. It was pretty much just opening it up, cutting the gums, fixing the cases, and putting them back together, and then home care and follow up every 3 months. When implants first came out, we jumped on it, and I and an oral surgeon in town started the first implant study club in Denver. And that's because no one knew how to restore them, and no one knew how to put them in, and no one knew anything about them. So we've been involved with that since the early 80s. The biggest thing with treatment planning and how we take care of patients that's changed is just the technology that we're involved with. Different types of gingival grafting, gum grafting, bone grafting procedures. We have the use of all of these biologic entities and biologic membranes, which for all intent and purpose allows us to be able to grow bone where we can never even envision growing bone in the past. And then the use of lasers and the use of implants, which has given patients the opportunity to be able to maintain their dentition for the better part of the rest of their life. The one thing which hasn't changed is that the need for patients to do proper home care and maintain it. Our job was not just to take care of the patient's dentition, but to take care of the health of the entire patient. We try to make the patient's lifetime and the whole thing of the patient's health be a major part of all that we did. And that was what was drilled into me from day one when I joined the practice. That's what I continued to push forward and embrace that full-heartedly, because that's the way she felt. So we directed our practice from when Anne first joined me specifically towards the health of the patient, the betterment of the patient, without any concern for how that affected the business aspect of our practice. We take care of our patients, and what's necessary to improve their life is the main goal that we have in that. But we also have a large office with a lot of employees, and improving and maintaining and making sure that their life is better is also a very big part of the philosophy of this practice. About 10 or 11 years ago, maybe 12, my son Nick joined the practice, and that just continued with that type of situation. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was transitioning out, so I was working fewer days, and we needed another person to take over. So that's when Kim joined the practice to, for all intent and purpose, take over for my clinical aspect, so that still maintain 3 doctors, which gives the best coverage for that space that we have, as well as the best care for all the patients, because for all intent and purpose, someone's around all the time. So that is the philosophy of the practice, and that has not changed at all as I transitioned out from clinical practice and transitioned to what I'm referred to right now as the consigliere of the practice. A view as to the history. I help make business decisions. I actually come into the office trying to keep everybody on the same plane on Monday mornings for 2 hours. During that time, we have an all-office meeting. I will say it's a business meeting, but it's a lot more than that. We discuss celebrations, how practice is running. We look at metrics for the operation of the practice. And then we do celebrations and discuss issues which have to do with our employees to keep the family as secure and operating as best as possible. So that's a big part of it, and I'm part of the leadership team and making long-term decisions. And because I had been there for so many years, I transitioned out at the beginning of COVID because I had just finished fighting metastatic melanoma, which I recovered from. But at that early 2020 timeframe, my oncologist didn't know, as none of them did, what this disease did for patients who had been treated. So she suggested, since dentistry was at that point such a risk occupation, perhaps it was better that I no longer treated patients. So I still help with a lot of my older patients who I had taken care of for 40 years, not clinically, but offering advice and talking to them and answering letters and working with other doctors and helping with marketing and other aspects of the practice. So I'm still around. They're kind enough to allow me to come and visit. And I told them that I would do it for nothing, which is basically the reality of the world. They'll tell you differently. But, it gives me a reason to wake up in the morning and still have my fingers and have to read articles. So during my free time, I read everything medical that I could find in the journals and all the research, which in itself is a very, very interesting aspect of trying to learn what was going on during this time frame. I've got 5 grandkids that live within 6 minutes of us. My daughter Jennifer she was the practice manager for years, but she worked with me for a long time. My son is there. My adopted daughter Anne is there. And my hopefully future adopted daughter Kim is there. And so just taking care of them. I play a lot of golf. I like going fishing. I ski during the winter. We spent 6 weeks in Cabo, Mexico this season. So my wife and I go down there, and we bring the family down there. And right now it's golf and fishing season.